onto the stage and hand over for our very first keynote. Give a warm hand for Julian.
Yeah, Peter, Dirk, first of all, really thank you very much for having me here. And I'm super happy for two reasons. First of all, you as Beiersdorf, you are finally a brand which I'm using every day. And that's not the case for the companies I'm talking normally when I'm talking with machine engineering companies, software companies. So that's the first reason I really like to be here. But the more important and second reason is you. Because I'm dealing every day with people like you, and you are the people who can move the needle within the companies, who can really make the difference. Because in traditional companies, I would say 90–95% of the people are like trying to make things more efficient, run the operations, and doing daily operative tasks. And you are a minority within the companies who are allowed to think about something new and something different. And it's super important. And now Dirk and Gitter and the Beiersdorf team put you together not only internally but also externally. And then we are at the beginning of my topic, ecosystems. Because I really think, and by the way, Gitter, I didn't know it, your originals or your story of the origin of Beiersdorf is kind of an ecosystem story as itself, even it's already decades ago. And I would like to bring that in today's setting and try to provide you with some insights, not only from the book, but also from my learnings from working together with many companies. And I chose the title, Unlocking Growth, the Domain-Based Path from Product Company to Ecosystem Innovator. And I think if you just have to take out one key issue from today, then it's exactly that domain-based thinking. So from traditional industry thinking in narrow scopes to cross-industry domain-based thinking, and I would like to show you how I think that can work. With that having said, by the way, we will have, for the agenda, we will have at least some minutes for question, and the first question which will be raised, that the one gets the book, so that's the incentive for questions later on. Yeah. Okay. Starting with me, just 30 seconds. So why am I here? I'm kind of a walking ecosystem by myself because on the one hand, I'm a professor of strategic management in Berlin. That's also my former background. I was head of strategy for AXA Insurance Company 10 years ago. And now I'm collaborating on the one hand with partners, doing good things within the ecosystem and also with my clients, of course, and to bring them into this domain-based thinking and ecosystem thinking. And I would like to start with a picture of the future. I'm currently being part of a couple of foresight processes where we look into the future of 10 years from now, 2035. And in these kind of processes, of course, there's no real surprise and nobody knows the future, but actually we think that it will be maybe a little bit different to today, but no real changes. But what is for sure and what we get out of it is actually this. We will have a future which will be either totally digital or at least more or less totally digital, totally interconnected and hopefully sustainable. And Gitta was pronouncing that also in her introduction. And that's super important if you bring that together, because if you think that through the end, digitalization 100% in everywhere we are in our lives and in our business context, connectivity as well and sustainability, maybe not in 10 years from now, sustainability, then this is only possible with collaboration. This is only possible if you really put your assets together and create products and services, but especially and in particular business models in a collaborative way. And this is what, and that's maybe the only chart which looks like a little bit scientific, because I think we will have a paradigm shift out there. And this is, by the way, not yet published yet. This is still my thoughts. I'm writing an article about that because what you know all, who has studied business administration in this room, by the way, maybe 50%. So you all know Porter, Michael Porter, and market-based view and the theory of, hey, you have to be the best one in your industry, either with a differentiation concept or being the cost leader in big market or a niche market. So that's the left side. Or put your assets to the right markets. So that's the asset-based view, or which we know as a theory like decades. And these theories, they are very good and brilliant, and they made companies working successfully in the last decades. But I think they have to be complemented by a new perspective, and this is the right perspective. This is the domain-based view, and that means we have different market layouts. So we are not competing against A to B in a narrow market, automotive company A against automotive company B. It's more that you are in markets which are more need-based, mobility, well-being. We have the example here of Beiersdorf. Maybe it's beauty, which is the broader domain where you are in. And then, of course, that changes the game because you cannot do that alone. And that's the right part. So the thing is, what do you do with your assets? Are they, on the one hand, enough? Or can you use them much more efficiently if you bring them together with others? And that's the ecosystem thinking. So you can make use out of your asset better than in the past if you smartly think about what are the markets of the future. And that's difficult, I know. And once again, when I give these talks or have these conversations with C-level head of strategy or business development or innovation people, then I'm asking them, hey, how many would follow our conversation now in your company? And they tell me maybe it's 1%. And then we say, hey, we have to increase that, to bring that mindset into the company. And that's difficult, it takes long, but it's important to start the journey. That's why you are here, that's why I'm here. So that's the starting point. And to give you an example, which is maybe very crisp, just take a pen company. Everybody has a pen, maybe you would say, okay, I have a smart pen already, but a pen company with a very product-centric business. And now, you can also take whatever product company. And now, your market definition is very narrow in the Porter sense, so we have to produce the best pens, we have to control our supply chain, we have to have good connections to retail and so on and so forth. But in the future, they have to move away from this narrow thinking. And one potential approach could be, hey, let's think in a domain which is education. And think about how can we make or create solutions for problems and needs out there when we have this broader definition. And my wife is a teacher, and she says, hey, of course, it would be super cool if the pen can be automatically correct the homework or the tests of my students or of my pupils there. Maybe that could be a use case. And this is actually the idea. That's just one idea, but it's a different thinking. It's for what is actually the job to be done for a certain product and for a company which has been very successfully worked for decades with one or different products. And that is only possible, once again, if you collaborate, because just take the example of education. Education is a broader space, so you have to have other touch points, you have to identify the broader needs, and you need partners to think about how can we create not only products, but services around and create an ecosystem. Ecosystem is then just a mindset, just a perspective of thinking bigger and open up the horizon. And the challenge here is, of course, for you and for all these companies, not doing everything to get stuck because it's too broad. And so it's choose the right market fields, but take this angle of domain-based view as a starting point. And with that having said, just one small review of, let's say, history of business and why this ecosystem thinking is relevant now and in the future. Because on the left side, you can see kind of a slide which shows you which are actually the dominant formats of making business in the past. And I mean, you know them all. You know the Henry Ford model example, so you can have a car of any color as long as it is black. So scaling effects, big factories. So we know that still from movies and from business literature. Then we had companies, service companies, internet companies with actually different value propositions, more service-oriented. We had, of course, the platform players doing matchmaking between supply and demand. And now, we have more and more companies thinking about experiences and integrating different products and services into a common experience, not only from products and services from one company, but from many companies, in B2B and in B2C. And so that's also my definition, and I promise it's the only definition. I think business ecosystems have to be seen as an experience which is created by many players, where the sum of its part is more than just the singular parts. So you create something better which you are not able and capable for by doing just solely by yourself. So once again, the experience is just the other side of the coin of the ecosystem. So ecosystem is not as a buzzword, you would say, why do I need that? No, you have to create solutions / experiences and think in these solutions, which is difficult because you know, okay, product has this purpose and we know how to produce it, that's it, we push it in the market, traditional marketing campaign, influencer, and then that's it, yeah? So I have abbreviated it a little bit, maybe too plump, but still, that's it, and the experience is more, thinking broader and actually creating more value also. And no matter who you ask here, these are numbers from McKinsey, but you can ask any other consultancy that this is really relevant, this thinking and this doing in the future, because here it's 1/3 of all our economy works with these models, whether it's 1/3 or more or even less, but it's big and that's important. And to give you a little bit more, let's say, something to work with is this picture, because I think, of course, most of the companies here in the room have very successful products or services. And the question is, how can you start from there? And of course, what you did or what you are doing is you think about which kind of value-add service can I add to my core and how can I be more successful with that. Then some of you have or are thinking about platforms, so where can I aggregate demand and can create an interaction engine with my clients and with my partners. That could be the next step. And then the last step is then to bring everything together and to create this experience with an ecosystem. And a good colleague or a good partner of mine is Thomas Kirste from Bosch. He had this nice metaphor of the differentiation between platform and ecosystem, which is often a question. So the platform is a dance floor. Let's take a club. But without the ecosystem of DJs, waiters, people who are having fun, who like to flirt, dance, having good conversations, the dance floor is nothing. So it's just the infrastructure. So you need to create something on the dance floor with the partners and with your clients, or with both, that the magic is happening. And so this is actually something which you can take out, think about what are the ingredients for a good party in a business sense, or in a business model sense, to make that happen. And to give you one example for a company you all know who did that very successfully is, of course, Apple. But Apple actually didn't start as an ecosystem company, as an experience company. When Steve Jobs and Wozniak founded Apple, they said, our vision is computers for all, very product-centric. Okay, computers had costs of 100,000 euros, personal computers, and so it was not affordable for the majority. So that was their vision, and so they tried to bring that vision into the market very successfully. But then they started to think about how can we add something on, and they created platforms you all are familiar with, like the App Store and also, of course, like iTunes. But the real show started like at 2010 when they integrated all of that. Then they really opened up for a wide network of developers, and they thought end-to-end in experiences, of course data-driven, and looked for opportunities in different domains like fitness, well-being, like financial services and others, where they could create value. And then this lock-in effect, which was on the last slide, which I think is probably the most important term in the ecosystem game, not lock in a technical sense, but lock in an experience sense, in a wow effect, in a really retention sense, that you remain in the ecosystem because you get the most, or at least the most important problem solved in the category, or even in different categories from this ecosystem doing so, performing so. But there are also failures, and the world is here really not so easy, because Microsoft, when Apple launched the iPhone, Microsoft was at the same positioning in terms of resources, maybe even better, and they thought, hey, we can do that alone. We have Nokia hardware, and now let's create some apps and just do it for us, because nobody needs so many, and integration is not that important. And so it was a big failure, so it was just 1% market coverage, and so they actually put it out of the market, and nobody's talking about that anymore. And now let's come to, let's say, today's situation, and let's have a look to some examples and to some industries. Here, this guy is Ola Källenius, CEO of Mercedes-Benz, and I think a great guy also in terms of ecosystem thinking, because he really has understood that it's not about only selling luxury cars, it's about creating lock-in effects within and beyond the car. Of course, the car still actually contributes probably 95, maybe even more % to the contribution margin of Mercedes-Benz still. But the lock-in is created not by nice advertising spots. It's created by features which lock you in, like karaoke in China. That's just a funny example I learned. People in China, they love to sing karaoke when they stand in the traffic jam or in front of their houses, and then they connect to each other and they sing jointly karaoke. You would say, okay, that's crazy, but that's just one feature, and there are many features also they created, and they look for features based on needs in different markets where they can create small magic moments of stickiness. And that's what they try to do together with Salesforce. That's why we have talked about AI. Gita mentioned that. They try to do that with Salesforce to get to the needs of the users and then to identify them and to create solutions either by themselves or and by third parties. And they are not the only ones, of course. They are the big players knocking on the door to get into the car, also to be experience creators. And you can even go further. Are there any suppliers, automotive suppliers here in the room? Anybody? No, but I'm also dealing very often with suppliers, and I think they also have to transform towards experience enabler, because they have to think that through the end, do they just deliver and produce and deliver components, or what is their contribution to that what is happening to create lock-in effects? And that's really different thinking, because that's a very much human-centric and need-based thinking, even if you're just at the end of the chain. Yeah? And you can apply that for, I think, for each industry, sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes today, sometimes maybe tomorrow. And now, what I want to do now in the last part of the keynote is to give you some guidance and to give you some help with a framework I co-created. Maybe it can help also today, maybe it can help in the next few days, weeks, and months. And the framework is very simple on the one hand, because it says everything what I said in a framework, first of all, starting with the human. So put the human being in the center of your thinking, no matter what kind of company you are. Starting point. And then, and it gets bigger, I know that is here too small to read, I'll show it in an example later on. Then we created 10 life areas, we called that, from mobility to spirituality to health and others. Once again, I'll show it later. So, and you can just think about where are you positioned just from the human-centered perspective with your products and with your portfolio, and what are then the opportunities. And then next step is that there are different roles out there. You can be very close to the human as an orchestrator, as a platform dealing with us as final customers. You can be a realizer, so-called, once again, that is also bigger in the next slide. A realizer where you produce products like Beiersdorf, which we use every day, or Mercedes-Benz would be also a realizer. And you can be an enabler, which is the outer ring. Then you are a B2B company. So this is kind of structuring the world in different roles depending on your closeness or to the human. And now what comes next, and once again, that's the overview. I show you just one detail later because that's then too complex, but I think that still can help to get the big picture. And then we are in the domains, because domains are not only in one life area. Domains can be across several life areas. Let's take well-being. Well-being is something with consumption, to eat healthy. It can be something with recreation, yeah, to make some sports. Yeah. It can, of course, it's in the domain, it's in the life area of health, but it can be also like links, can have links to other life areas, and so these domains are on top of the life areas, and this thinking is really, for many companies, totally new, but important to set a different frame for the opportunity space. And finally, you need the business model, so you have to come up with something to make money and to identify which are exactly the business models behind. So here, once again, simple example. So I chose the example of our host. So here, for instance, enabler could be Evonik. And once again, there can be different positionings, of course, for a company. That's just one, let's say, example to show it, to demonstrate it. Beiersdorf could be a realizer with the products you all know, and maybe some of you are also using. And the orchestrator could be Edeka. We have somebody from Edeka here? No? because Dirk said retailers are also here. But it's also in Hamburg, the headquarters. So of course, they have like physical stores. They also have, of course, a web store, but basically Orchestrator is just aggregating demand in a platform, and a platform can be physical or digital. So in that case, it's even more physical. So now, let's have an example to demonstrate that. Who in the room here plays guitar? You know Fender? You have a Fender guitar? You don't? Because I heard, so my career of music ended up in the music school with 6 years, so I'm not really an expert in music, but Fender is very interesting because it's not Apple, it's not a big company, 750 million, so a small company, but they are really very smart in terms of experiences. First of all, they are a hardware company, they produce guitars. And I think Jimmy Fender even is the founder of the e-guitar, so famous guy. So what he did, or what Fender did, is they started to get closer to their clients with a tuning app. A tuning app, you can actually try to set up your instrument better, and they learned who is a professional and who is a beginner, because if you have to tune that very often, you're a beginner obviously, and if not, you're a professional, so you get kind of a good customer segmentation. Then they connected these people who they thought about that they need some assistance with guitar teachers, online or offline, so from the ecosystem outside. And then they did further things on the road. They even created communities between their clients. They connected to concert organizers, so more and more created experiences around the guitar to create these login effects. And so this is, I think, a good example because it's not a super big company and it's still starting the journey, so it's not the end, and so you can learn from these kind of login creation effects. Once again, automotive industry, and this is more the portfolio perspective, because if you look at the other players, we had Mercedes before, but you have different strategies. You have Tesla starting with energy in living and with mobility, of course, and now moving very strongly into gaming, meaning entertainment. So this is their positioning, because they think, hey, self-driving cars, what can people do? They can do gaming. Gaming is, by the way, a growing industry, very interesting. So that's their positioning. NIO, New Kids on the Block, Chinese player, they started very differently. They said, hey, we built an ecosystem in all life areas. So we actually try to produce smartphones, furnitures, and so on. You can say they are totally like crazy, but that is their way of doing it, and we will see whether this can be successful. And Amazon is not an automotive player, but Amazon, you can see here, almost everything is marked blue, so they have their position almost everywhere, and so they are very strong also in mobility, and so the mobility players and suppliers, they really have to think about how to deal with that, either compete or cooperate. So you can see here, this domain-based thinking is very important, and not to get rid of the opportunities and the challenges you get from different market layouts then. So now finalized and really very brief what I did here for the host. So we took also this strategy map for you, and you can see, don't go to the detail here, but you can see also here Beiersdorf has actually portfolio elements in almost all life areas. And so they bring something to the party, and maybe this can be an inspiration also for you if you take that thinking later on for the workshops, where to cooperate with this holistic perspective. And we had one idea, and this is totally fictitious, what you can do with that. You can then do kind of simulation and think about what could be an idea where to move on, and that is what we created up front. Maybe Beiersdorf can actually move into the role of an orchestrator for travelers and to be present in all mobility touch points. Maybe you have tried that already, maybe not, but take it as an inspiration, as an example where to move on, and to think about who can be partners, how can you bring the brand into other like use cases and situations, and how to make that experience even better and bring it out of retail into life of human beings. And that's also my message. So domain-based thinking is thinking from the human perspective, and to think about how can you solve problems in life with partners together. And to come to the end, to have at least 3 to 4 minutes for questions, I would like to end up with this picture. No one knows the future, of course, that's a low-brainer, but what is for sure is that the part of ecosystem business models will grow. And you have to make, once again, I come to that what I said at the early beginning. You are the ones who can move the needle. Of course, you will get pushbacks from C-level and from many others in the organizations. But you have the degree of freedom of thinking. And really use that. That's really an asset. And I know, once again, I had that in my former corporate times as well, and sometimes it's really difficult to deal with that, but it's an honor to do so because many others, the majority, cannot do like this. And that's why take that to bring these levels up in your company because it's needed. I'm really sure companies won't be successful in the future when they just focus on efficiency and optimize their operations. They have to do that, but they have to do the other one as well. That's why you are here. And to end up really now with the last picture, who's that? Ed Sheeran. So Ed Sheeran is not only, and I'm ending up with Ed Sheeran, because he's not only probably one of the most successful singers next to Taylor Swift in the world, but he's also a clever businessman and an ecosystem thinker. Because what he did, he thought, hey, nobody wants to listen just my songs. And let's bring all together. Let's invite famous other guys like Justin Bieber, Eminem, I don't know all of them, and let's take our distribution channels and the distribution channels of all of them and grow the pie. So that's my end message. Not only thinking in how can I get most out of the pie, but grow it, and then everybody will get a piece which is big enough. And with that having said, so today become the Ed Sheeran of cross-industry thinking, and thank you for having me here, and now open for questions.